and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to the second day of Bookmas, and we're in front of the TBR cart, which means we are going to be going over all of the books that I read in November, and I'm very excited and a little bit nervous, maybe a little bit embarrassed because I didn't do great with this month's TBR, if I'm being honest. So we're just gonna get it out of the way and go over the books that I had on my TBR that I didn't read this month. And first up we have The Night and the Moth. Yes, this is just the dust jacket. I have the physical copy downstairs. I'm lazy, I don't feel like getting it, and it's downstairs because I am in the middle of this. I at least started it in November and got about halfway through. I just didn't finish it, unfortunately. I really wanted to, and circumstances just didn't allow for that to happen. So yeah, so this will be my December TBR wrap up, but I am enjoying it. So there's a little bit of a spoiler for that. Then we have Everyone Here is Lying. I don't have a good reason for this. I just honestly was just so wrapped up in reading books that weren't on my physical TBR that when I did start reading them, this one just was ultimately not picked. I also didn't read Sleep Like Death, and then the other book that I didn't read is Nightshade, which I don't have a physical copy of. That one I didn't get to because when I was trying to prioritize these books, I decided it was probably best to read the ones I actually own physical copies of, rather than start with the one that I don't have yet. So 4 books out of, I think, 10 or 11 that I didn't get to. Oops. Like I said, I read a lot that wasn't on this list, so it was still a good reading month quantity-wise, just not necessarily accountability-wise. So without further ado, we're going to get into the ones that I actually did read. But first, we're going to have a coffee break. I got to pull out my cute little Christmas coffee cups, and I'm so excited about it because they're adorable. Anyway, moving into this, finally. Alright, so we did it. Picked up Throne of Glass. I think I read Assassin's Blade in October, and it took me that long to pick up the second book. Not because I didn't like it, but because this is a long series, and I'm worried that it's not going to live up to the hype. And an annoying thing that I do is when I think something's not going to live up to the hype, I just don't read it. And I don't have a good reason for why. But this was like a 4-star read. I really enjoyed this. I think it's a great setup for the series. This follows a young girl named Selena Sardothian. And they often say her entire name because it's kind of fun. Like, it's a fun full name. And she was in prison for a couple different reasons that you may or may not know going into this book, depending on the reading order that you choose. I understood why she was in prison, and it made sense to me. But that's definitely like a mystery that you figure out later if you didn't choose to read Assassin's Blade first. So she's in prison, and she's offered this way out of this pretty much death prison. Like, nobody expected her to survive as long as she did in the prison. And she's told that she can enter this competition that the king is holding pretty much to be the king's champion. And that means they're going to work for the king as an assassin. And I believe the contract would be 4 years if they end up winning, and then they can win their ultimate freedom. So she's picked by the prince to enter this competition, and the entire book follows her in the middle of these trials against other assassins, thieves, knights, like some pretty terrible people too, that are chosen by other lords and rulers that are a part of this competition. And it's kind of fun. It's a cool setup that they're all sort of like hosted by somebody. Hosted might not, sponsored might be the better word, by somebody, and seeing the way that the trials work in here. I always love a good trial. There's also something else going on in the background that's adding another really concerning element to this deadly game that didn't really need to get any more deadly. I think it's setting up for some reveals later in the series that I'm really excited for, getting into like more of a fantasy like fae element, and I'm very curious to see how that is accomplished. Then we read My Mary Higgins Clark for the month, Sleeping Beauty Killer. This is a 4-star read. I really love the ones that are like under the tagline of her Under Suspicion series because it follows a TV producer that is investigating these crimes that somebody's under suspicion for, but a resolution was never come to. Nobody was ever really arrested. And this one is unique because somebody was arrested and she went to prison and served time for allegedly killing her fiance, but she comes out of prison and is like, I really didn't do this. I want you to reopen this case. So a lot on the line where she's trying to prove her innocence after already being in prison. So Sorry, you could probably hear my dogs in the background. So I really did enjoy this one. It was a 4-star read. It kept me intrigued the entire time. Then I finally read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. I meant to read this last year in the fall time, never did, so I was really excited to get to this one. If you haven't seen the reading vlog that I did reading some of my fall reads, this was included in there. This follows a woman who takes over her aunt's cafe in a small town when she's kind of just looking for a little bit of a reset in her life, and her aunt has given her the cafe. So it's just like a cute, kind of Hallmarky vibes book, but set in the fall instead of Christmas, but same vibe as like Hallmark Christmas movies. And she ends up sort of forming a relationship, a friendship with the local baker, who is a little bit grumpy, but I think within good reason. So they form this friendship and they start realizing that they might have feelings for each other. You know, the typical way that a romance book is going to go. It's like a 3-star read, definitely a vibes book if you're looking for something cute and cozy and fun, but nothing like out of this world as far as the plot goes. Then we're gonna get into one of my disappointments for the month. This is Killer Potential. I read that in my fall video as well. I had this on like my list of 2025 releases that I did at the beginning of the year, and they were ones that I was really excited to read. I found this one randomly and thought the premise sounded really fun and unique. It's about this young woman who is an SAT tutor to wealthy families, and one day she shows up for her appointment and the parents of the young girl she's tutoring are dead in the backyard, and then she finds somebody tied up in the house. So she frees the woman that's tied up in the house. They go on the run together because they're like, the cops are going to believe that it's us, and allegedly they're trying to solve this crime while they're on the run. I say allegedly because it really doesn't feel like they did anything towards solving this crime. It just was them on the run. Slight moments of suspense, but a lot of like just extended road trip vibes that I was getting from this. I felt like the main female character was really frustrating because she really didn't do anything to get herself out of this situation other than continue to make it worse by running and committing some other crimes. And she also is really obviously jealous of rich people, and it's, I think, meant to come across in a way that is sort of looking at the disparity between privileges that rich people and middle class / poor people have, especially in the justice system, but it just comes off as whiny and ultimately very jealous. And I just wasn't really into that. Like, it didn't, because I don't think it was meant to feel that way, it just felt very out of place and very irritating to read. So yeah, this was like a 2-star read. Very, very disappointing. Then another one that was in that reading vlog, we have If It Makes You Happy. This one was the opposite of disappointing. I adored this book so much. This is a 5-star read. This is another one that gives like cozy small town romance vibes. Very Gilmore Girls-esque. It's set in the 70s, I believe. Nope, not 70s. 1997. God, Hannah, not that far. And it's in this small town in Vermont. I just think that there was more to this plot than, say, The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. There was a lot going on in this book that talked about grief and understanding grief and trying to sort of figure out who you are and what you want out of your life. And the main male character is struggling with putting himself back out there in new relationships and the way that that would work. I felt like there was a lot of depth, a lot of character development. The main male character has 2 kids, and every time he interacts with them, it's adorable. It's absolutely, like, there is that moment when you're watching men with children and they're just like, they exude that fatherly figure and they're just so cute with them. And most girls, including myself, are like, oh, look how good he is with kids. Like, he gives that. It's cute. It's adorable. Even as somebody that doesn't want kids, I think it's cute and adorable. So I loved that. I loved the romance in here. It was just fantastic. I don't even think I said what the setup is, but she comes into this town taking over her mom's bed and breakfast after her mother passes away. And she is also sort of like resetting her life. So similar plot construct to Pumpkin Spice Cafe, but like I said, a lot more depth to it and exploration and character development. So yeah, 5-star read. Loved this so much. If you didn't read this in the fall season this year, definitely read it in the fall season next year. You will not regret it. Then a cute little witchy read. We have The Ex-Hex. I went into this thinking that I was going to love this a little bit more than I did. It was fun. It was a good time, but I don't think I'm ever going to reach for it again. This is about a witch who, when she's 19, decides to curse her ex-boyfriend because he breaks her heart and is leaving town. They'd only been dating for like 3 months, but I guess like it really really did a number on her. So she decides to curse him for fun. She doesn't think that this is going to actually work, but apparently it did in fact take. And then I think like, is it 10 years later? 9 years. 9 years later, he comes back to town because it's like his family founded the town. He has to charge the ley lines or whatever because this is a witchy community. He comes back and things start going haywire because of this curse and the fact that he is now back within town lines. There is a little bit of a fun element in here that I wasn't expecting. Like the curse has more to it than just her casting it. So I thought that was fun, but I just still wasn't overly invested. It was just a cute, fun time. Like I don't think I'm going to read it again. I'll still read the sequel, I think, because I own it, but that'll probably be it. That was like a 3-star read. Then I guess we're going to get into one of my DNFs for the month. We had The Brothers Karamazov. I feel bad DNFing this, but I got 10 hours in the audiobook and really just couldn't care less. It was boring. It just wasn't my thing. It's like a 40-hour long audiobook and I just didn't have any desire to read this. I feel like half of my classics end up going this way where I just don't care, and that's terrible, but I'm learning that maybe classics just aren't really my thing. I've been reading them so much because I have a ton of physical copies of them, and I would at least like to try to give them a chance before I just unhaul them. So this is the result of that. This follows 3 brothers and their father, and all of the brothers, or like at least 2 of the brothers, have different mothers, lots of different complex family dynamics going on, and I think one of them is in a monastery. And I don't even know. I don't even know. There's a lot going on in this book that I couldn't begin to tell you because I just struggled to actually pay attention to the audiobook. Again, it sounds terrible. I'm sure it's a great book for people that love classics. Obviously, it's listed as one for a reason. I just not the audience for it. Then I read Agatha Christie's Remembered Death. This one was a really fun setup because it's talking about a young woman that they believe committed suicide a year prior. And then each chapter in the beginning is all of these people that were in her life and at the dinner where she died, and sort of their relationship to her, and also kind of hinting at what their motivation for killing her would be like if somebody had killed her. And then it gets into, well, was she killed? Was she not killed? Her husband starts trying to dig into this. Other crazy things start happening, which, like, I kind of saw one of them coming, but it added a fun twist to it. Once again, with an Agatha Christie, I could not figure out how this crime was accomplished and who was actually the perpetrator until she revealed it. And I'm like, that makes so much sense, but couldn't piece it together before we got there. So this was like a 3.5-star read. I did enjoy this one. I've decided we're going to get my other 2 DNFs out of the way for the month. First, we have The Raise. This is like a corporate mystery intrigue where the former CEO of this multi-millionaire company had died and her business partner takes over, and according to the blurb, starts realizing that maybe there are some secrets that were being hidden from her about the company, and maybe her partner actually was murdered. Never really got to that part of the book to see whether or not that's how this ends up being executed. I just was really bogged down by all of the business related talk related to this company. It's just not really my thing. I really didn't like the main female character. She got extremely worked up about an investor texting her nicely just after the funeral of her friend and going, oh my god, he's flirting with me and this and that, and she starts like saying that she's turned on. They described that in a really creepy way. And she has a boyfriend, like a boyfriend and a happy relationship. And she's talking about this and I'm like, I can't do this. I don't like you. And I don't like the way this story is being told. So I decided to DNF that. And then my other DNF for the month, I think this is my last DNF, thankfully, is The Forest Where the Phoenix Sleeps. I'd seen such good things about this. I was part of a Facebook group where everybody loved this, so I got it. And I'm afraid that I don't quite understand what the hype is. This is about a young woman who doesn't realize that she has some magical abilities. There's a fae realm, there's a human realm. Her magical abilities sort of come to the forefront in a pretty aggressive, violent way. And this man who had suddenly been in her life for a little bit whisks her away to the fae realm, and he's supposed to be helping her, but he never really explains what this world is. The world development was severely lacking. I was over 100 pages into this, and I still couldn't tell you what the world development is and why everything in the fae realm is evil and dark and trying to eat people. And the writing style just felt very hodgepodge. Like, we jumped from one random thing to another in a way that didn't make sense. One female character in here, something absolutely terrible happens to her. She's really upset and mad and angry about it, rightfully so. And then in the next chapter, not chapter, next paragraph, she's laughing and giggling and just happy. And it's not that that's her personality, it's just the writing is that all over the place that we forgot what the emotion was literally a few sentences prior. I'm like, I'm now done reading this. I just don't care. And I also thought the female character was insufferable in here, so yeah, had to DNF this one. I feel like I have been talking for quite a while at this point, and I still have a decent way to go. I did not realize I read this many books in November, and yet I still feel like some of these were very disappointing. Speaking of very disappointing, we have A Study in Drowning. This is, no, A Theory of Dreaming. This is the second book to A Study in Drowning, which is a sort of, how do I want to phrase it? Like a dark academia, kinda, a little bit of like gothic fantasy in there. It's really hard to describe the plot for that one with the way like the magical elements come into it. This was not really planned according to the author, and I feel like that's with good reason. The end of the first book kind of leaves a lot of things open-ended, but I don't think that was a problem. And once we came into this book, we started having too many things that needed wrapped up, and I don't think it was executed very well. In the first book, the main characters are pretty much like isolated from the rest of the world because they are in this author's house who had recently died, and the one character is trying to prove that he was not responsible for writing all of this famous literature. The female character is there as an architecture student trying to save the house from crumbling into disrepair. And like I said, they're kind of separated from everything else. So the war aspect that they have going on between two sides of their country just because people groups don't get along is kind of like in the background. You know it's there, but you don't really need to address it. And the way that sexism in academics comes to the forefront because she is a female that was trying to be in the literature college and then couldn't, and is one of the only females in the architecture college. You get to see little bits of that in the beginning. It's kind of not super resolved, but again, in the background because she is now away from all of that. And they're all talked about in ways that they feel semi-resolved, but not super necessary to get those answers because they're not there. And then this book, they go back to school, and like I said, all of these things are now at the forefront and they need a resolution. And I think that there was too much going on that needed answers, and it wasn't able to be done properly because weaving all of those really heavy topics together was not working. I just didn't really appreciate it. A lot of the character development that happened in the first one felt like we went 100 yards backwards, and I get that sometimes good forward progress often has some setbacks, but like this felt really, really extreme. And these two main characters that were supposed to be in love with each other just never communicated. They never talked the entire book, and yeah, I don't know. I feel like that was a whole rant. I'm sorry. I really was looking forward to this one, so I'm very, very upset that it didn't live up to those expectations. So this was like another 2-star read. Really wish that one had stayed as a standalone. The author said she was pushed to write another one because people wanted answers, and I feel like maybe we just should have figured out the answers in her own head. Sometimes it's okay to not have things solidly wrapped up at the end of the book. Like an open-ended ending isn't necessarily a bad thing. Then we have some books that I had started at the end of October and needed to finish before I could jump into my November TBR. That is part of the reason why I didn't get through a lot of my November TBR. Also because I just read a bunch of books that weren't on it, but like we're not talking about that right now. This is one of those that was in October, and it's not another love song. This was kind of cute, but I actually forgot that I read this, if I'm being completely honest. This is about a cellist and a violinist. Yeah, violinists who are in the same musical ensemble, orchestra, whatever they call it. But he didn't really know that she existed. They cross paths at a wedding, and suddenly he is like obsessed with her, is what that pretty much boils down to. But he is a mean, grumpy character who sucks at portraying his feelings and expressing them. So she thinks that he just hates her, and they keep crossing paths and interacting with each other. There were some really good romantic moments in here. Some fun spice scenes. I will say, I did appreciate some of the spice in here, and I haven't been appreciating spice very much. But all in all, not an overwhelmingly memorable plot for this. Like I said, I forgot that I read this. So, yeah. That was probably like a 3-star read, I think. Then moving into this beast of a book, we have Alchemized. I started this at the end of October as well and was really pacing myself through this because it's 1,000 pages and it's also extremely heavy and extremely dark. And I was annotating. God, I loved every minute of this book. When I finally closed the book at the end, it felt like, I don't know, I felt like I was losing something for a minute there because I had been so wrapped up in these characters. And this follows the story of a young woman who is, how do I even explain? How do I even begin to explain this plot? It is set after our war has ended and this woman is discovered in a stasis tank. She's put there magically and nobody really seems to understand why she's there, where she came from, who she is. And she doesn't know these answers because she's missing her memories and she doesn't know why. This world is full of alchemy, which I found really interesting. Trying to learn the way that that functions in here is incredible. Like, I loved the magical world that this author created. And it was just, there was so much that was stunning and beautiful about this. The main female character ends up going to somebody called the High Reeve. He's supposed to be helping get her memories back. And you start to sort of see a tenuous connection forming between them that's not really born out of anything other than, like, maybe forced proximity. You're not really sure. But, like, it's there, even though he hates her, and she obviously hates him because he's on the opposite side of this war that they had been fighting. And it's told in a present and past timeline, which I really enjoyed. I feel like getting all of the present day stuff and then going back in time and learning all the things that were in her blocked memories just hits so hard, and it's beautiful. This fantasy sort of takes the idea of religion and the way that we can have sort of unquestioned faith in something that really drives us to do sometimes crazy and horrible things because we believe in it so strongly and we haven't questioned anything about it. And then it turns it on its head and it's like, should we maybe be questioning this? Like, are we the bad guys? If we're not, why are we the good guys? What is this cause that we've been fighting for so long? What lines do we have in war when we're fighting with other people? Where is, like, the absolute limit? And just so much about war, the choices that we make in it, religion, the choices that we make in support of that. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. Everybody describes it as a love story, not a romance. And I would agree, this is like a tragic love story. It's not cute, romantic, nothing like that. Like, it is a love story that's born out of sometimes desperation and obsession and dark times, and it's still beautiful and haunting. This was a 5-star read, if you couldn't guess. Then I read Savage Fae. This is the second book to the Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac series. I can't really go too much into this because it would give away stuff for the first one, but I did really enjoy this. This was, I think, like a 4.5-star read. It was a good time, and I'm still really enjoying being in the Zodiac Academy world. Hopefully, at some point, I will actually get through that entire series. Then one that I finished at the end, not the end of October, but like the beginning of November. I'd started it at the end of October, is Savage Lands. I had found this on Audible and decided to listen to the audiobook for this and absolutely loved it. This is following a young woman who is like the ward of somebody really important in this world where there's humans and there's fae, but the fae are very, like, there's so many different types of fae in this world. I can't even, like, demons and minotaurs and vampires and, like, those types of fae. It's not just that they have powers. And there's, like, this war going on between the humans and the fae, as per usual in a fae-human fantasy. She gets in trouble for something and ends up in this pretty much death prison that they have called the House of Death, Halahaz. And it says that when people go in, they don't come out. So she's now in this death prison where they also have pretty much like pit fights where if you've gotten yourself in trouble, you end up in the pits and you have to fight to the death every single time that you're there, and it gets progressively harder. She is one of the only humans in this prison, which makes it so much more difficult for her to be there. I just loved all of the different fae that are represented in here. The tension between her and one of the main characters is fantastically done. And I was on the edge of my seat reading this the entire time. I actually bought the entire rest of the series because I loved this so much. This is like a 4.5-star read. There are 8 books total. So I went out and bought 7 more because I loved this and I really wanted these indie covers specifically. But yeah, I'm really excited to continue through this series. And then lastly, we're going to end this video off with Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. Probably should have picked a higher note to end off on because this one was kind of a disappointment. I only knew that this was like sapphic vampires and that was it. I didn't realize that this followed 3 different vampires throughout different time periods in history. These are like old school vampires where they can't enter a home unless they're invited in, and they can't walk in daylight because it makes them feel ill. And it's all these women that sort of use their vampire powers to get some agency in their life, which I can appreciate and understand. I loved the female empowerment aspect of this, but I felt like none of them had any really redeeming qualities. All of them, well, not all of them, but most of the characters in here as vampires didn't care that they were completely just killing humans to sustain themselves. Like, that kind of bothered me. They didn't have any guilt or remorse for the fact that they were killing people. And I kind of wanted that contrast in their personalities, where it's like, yes, I'm doing this to survive, but God, I really don't want to. Or like just the ability to not completely kill somebody when they're doing this. So I didn't really like that. One of the other female characters, she did some pretty screwed up things and justified them as like, well, this is outside of my control because of somebody else. I just didn't feel like anybody was really redeemable in here. I wasn't connected to this as much as everybody else was. I really like V.E. Schwab's writing. It's very distinct and unique and poetic, but I didn't enjoy this story, which, like I said, was a disappointment because everybody else seems to love this book and I just really didn't get the hype. So this was maybe like a 2.5, 3-star rate. At the end of the day, I really had expected this to be closer to like 4 or 5. So yeah, not the greatest note to end on. I read a lot of books in November. I'm not even sure how many that was. It's a decent stack in front of me, but I still feel like, all in all, maybe it wasn't the best reading month quality-wise. Like, there were some good ones in here, but I feel like overwhelmingly so there were a lot of mid reads and disappointing ones. Like 3 DNFs in a month is pretty bad for me. So yeah, hopefully December will be a little bit better and we can end the year on a high note. I have some pretty high hopes for the books that I picked in December. If you guys hadn't seen my TBR video, I did post that as my first Bookmas day, so you could go watch that. But anyway, I've been rambling for quite a while now, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to say thank you for watching this video if you've made it this far. I hope to see you in the next Bookmas video in 2 days from now. Bye!